July 24th, 1943. Somewhere in the Caroline Islands, Western Pacific, Commander Lawrence Daspit peers through the periscope of USS Tinosa. His palms sweat against the cold metal. 3,000 yards ahead, the Japanese tanker Tonin Maru No. 3 wallows like a wounded whale. 19,000 tons of steel and fuel, the largest oil tanker in the Imperial Japanese Navy. Dead in the water. Daspit has already hit her twice. 2 perfect strikes. The explosions tore holes in her hull, but she refuses to sink. Now he's firing again, and again, and again. Torpedo 3, dud. Torpedo 4, dud. Torpedo 5 strikes the hull with a sickening clang. No explosion. 6, 7, 8. Each one a $3,000 miracle of American engineering. Each one smashing uselessly against Japanese steel. In the torpedo room, men are crying. The 13 torpedoes fired at point-blank range into a stationary target. 11 have failed. The tanker's crew is literally waving at them from the deck, mocking them. Daspit has 1 torpedo left, just 1, and he makes a decision that will change the war. He doesn't fire it. What Commander Daspit didn't know, what none of them knew, was that American submarines had been going to war for 20 months with a weapon that had a 60 to 80% failure rate. The Mark 14 torpedo, the most expensive, most sophisticated torpedo ever designed. And it was fundamentally catastrophically broken. 3 separate fatal flaws, each one discovered, each one denied, each one costing American lives, while the U.S. Navy's Bureau of Ordnance insisted the weapon was perfect and submariners were simply incompetent. By July 1943, these American submarines had fired over 9,000 torpedoes at Japanese ships. Most did absolutely nothing. Submarine commanders were being relieved of duty for lack of aggression when their weapons simply refused to explode. The silent service was hemorrhaging morale. Japanese convoys sailed unmolested. Oil tankers like Tonin Maru delivered fuel for 0 fighters and battleships. The Pacific War hung in the balance, and in Washington, admirals in pressed uniforms insisted there was no problem. What Daspit didn't know was that one stubborn vice admiral was about to conduct an experiment so dangerous, so unorthodox, that it would get him court-martialed if he failed. And if he succeeded, he would unleash the most lethal submarine force in naval history. This is the story of how the Mark 14 torpedo almost lost World War II and how one man fixed it against direct orders. December 7, 1941. 5 hours after Pearl Harbor burns, Admiral Harold Stark sends orders throughout the Pacific Fleet. Execute unrestricted submarine warfare against Japan. The silent service goes hunting. 51 submarines, each carrying 24 Mark 14 torpedoes, the most advanced underwater weapon in the world. Steam-driven, 3,000 pounds of death screaming through the water at 46 knots, a 680-pound warhead, enough to break the keel of any ship afloat. The Mark 14 had 2 detonation systems, a contact exploder for direct hits, and the revolutionary Mark 6 magnetic influence exploder designed to sense a ship's magnetic field and detonate beneath the keel, breaking the target's back. Brilliant, elegant, unstoppable, or so the Bureau of Ordnance claimed. They'd designed it in the 1920s, tested it exactly twice with live warheads. They were too expensive to waste on testing, cost $10,000 each. The Navy had so much confidence in the Mark 14, they'd never fired one at a moving target, never fired one at an actual ship. The test torpedoes carried dummy warheads filled with water, different weight, different balance, different performance. But the admirals in Washington were certain the Mark 14 was perfect. The submariners discovered otherwise immediately. January 1942. USS Swordfish fires 13 torpedoes at a Japanese convoy, 0 hits. USS Seawolf fires 8 torpedoes, 0 hits. USS Skipjack puts 4 torpedoes into an aircraft carrier at 800 yards, point-blank range. They watch through the periscope as all 4 slam into the hull. Not one explodes. The patrol reports flood back to Pearl Harbor. Torpedoes running erratic. Premature detonations. Duds. The captains are furious. Their crews are demoralized. They're risking their lives, stalking enemy warships, firing the perfect shot, and nothing happens. The Bureau of Ordnance's response? The submarine commanders were incompetent. Poor shooting, bad seamanship, operator error. Captain John Wilkes, commander of submarines Southwest Pacific, wrote to Washington, "In the defense of Luzon, we fired 96 torpedoes. 3 Japanese ships sunk. 3. A 3% success rate." Buord's response was essentially, "Try aiming better." By mid-1942, the problem was undeniable. Some torpedoes exploded prematurely, miles from their targets. Others ran directly beneath enemy ships without exploding. Still others struck hulls squarely and did nothing. Captains reported watching their torpedoes lodge in enemy hulls like thrown darts. Warheads visible above the waterline, fuses undetonated. The silent service was fighting World War II with broken weapons, and the old men in Washington refused to believe it. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Japan's war machine ran on imported oil. Tankers from the Dutch East Indies, cargo ships from Southeast Asia, all vulnerable to submarine attack. If American subs could cut those supply lines, Japan would collapse. But they couldn't sink what they couldn't hit, and they couldn't hit what wouldn't explode. Through 1942, American submarines fired 1,442 torpedoes. They claimed 109 ships sunk. Japanese records later showed only 40 actually went down. A 70% failure rate. Men were dying. Submarines were being detected because torpedoes exploded prematurely, giving away their positions. Other boats were being sunk because their weapons failed, forcing them to remain in combat zones far too long. Lieutenant Commander Dudley "Mush" Morton of USS Wahoo became legendary for his aggression and his rage at the Mark 14. After one patrol where 8 of 12 torpedoes failed, he radioed Pearl Harbor, "We need a new fish, and we need it now." The Bureau of Ordnance filed the report and changed nothing. What the Navy needed was someone willing to prove them wrong, someone with the rank to be heard, the courage to defy orders, and access to submarines and live torpedoes. They needed Charles Lockwood. Rear Admiral Charles Andrews Lockwood, Jr. had absolutely no business solving a torpedo crisis. His expertise was submarine operations, not weapons design. He wasn't an engineer. He'd never worked at the Naval Torpedo Station in Newport, Rhode Island, the facility that designed the Mark 14. He had no formal training in explosives or detonator mechanisms. What he had was something more dangerous to the Bureau of Ordnance. He listened to his submarine commanders. May 1942. Lockwood takes command of submarines Southwest Pacific, based in Fremantle, Australia. Within weeks, the patrol reports landing on his desk paint a damning picture. The Mark 14 is failing at catastrophic rates, but when Lockwood requests permission to investigate, the Bureau of Ordnance shuts him down. The torpedo works perfectly, they insist. The problem is crew training. Fire more carefully. Approach closer. Don't blame the weapon for operator incompetence. But Lockwood keeps reading the reports. USS Pompano fires 9 torpedoes at a tanker. 9 hits observed. The tanker sails away. USS Permit shoots 10 torpedoes into a cargo ship anchored at a pier. 11 fail to explode. Yes, 11, because one circular runner came back and nearly sank Permit herself. USS Seawolf fires 15 torpedoes at a whaling factory ship. 15 impacts, the target limps away. These aren't rookie mistakes. These are America's best submarine commanders, executing textbook attacks with state-of-the-art fire control systems, and their weapons are failing. June 1942. Lockwood does something unprecedented. Without authorization, without permission, without informing the Bureau of Ordnance, he orders torpedo testing, field testing, real torpedoes, real conditions. Captain James Fife, his operations officer, sets up the first experiment in Albany, Australia. They fire torpedoes at the harbor nets, measuring depths with crude mechanical gauges. The results are stunning. Every Mark 14 runs 10 feet deeper than its depth setting, every single one. Set a torpedo to run at 10 feet. It runs at 20, perfect for passing harmlessly beneath the keel of any destroyer or submarine, perfect for missing every ship in the Pacific Fleet. Lockwood fires off a report to Washington. The depth mechanism is defective. Here's the data. The Bureau of Ordnance responds, "Your test methodology is flawed. See, the torpedo performs to specification." They won't even look at his data. February 1943, Lockwood is transferred to Pearl Harbor, promoted to commander of Submarines Pacific Fleet, COM Subpac. Now he controls the entire Pacific Submarine War, and now he has resources. Within weeks of arriving, Lockwood makes a decision that could end his career. The Bureau of Ordnance has forbidden any unauthorized torpedo testing. The Mark 14 is classified. Its exploder mechanism is so secret, submarine commanders aren't allowed to examine it. Tampering with a torpedo is a court-martial offense. Lockwood orders his staff to prepare for comprehensive field testing, live warheads, live detonators, real targets. He's going to prove the Mark 14 is broken, or he's going to end his career trying. The moment of insight comes in his office at Pearl. He's reviewing patrol reports from USS Trigger. Commander Roy Benson fired 14 torpedoes at perfect 90-degree angles. Textbook, all 14 were duds. Lockwood circles the number, 14. Then he looks at his depth correction data. Then at reports of magnetic detonator failures. 3 problems, 3 separate catastrophic failures. Any one of them would cripple the Mark 14's effectiveness. Together, they've created the most expensive military failure in American history. And if he's going to fix them, he's going to have to break every rule the Navy has. Pearl Harbor, May 1943. The Hawaiian island of Kahoolawe rises from the Pacific like a brown fist, barren, uninhabited, perfect. Lockwood stands on the deck of a submarine tender, watching crews rig a fishing net 500 yards offshore. Behind the net, these sheer cliffs rise from the water. The plan is simple. Fire torpedoes at the cliff. The net will stop them. Measure their depth. Captain Charles Swede Momsen, Lockwood's deputy, shakes his head. If Buord finds out we're doing this without authorization, then we better get good data, Lockwood says. May 20th, 1943. USS Muscalonge fires the first test shots. Torpedoes set for 10 feet, 16 feet, 20 feet. Every single one hits the net 10 feet deeper than set. The Australian tests weren't flukes. The Mark 14 has a systematic depth error. Lockwood's team identifies the problem. The torpedoes are heavier in the nose than in testing. Live warheads versus dummy warheads. The depth mechanism can't compensate. Simple, fixable, deadly. Lockwood fires another report to Washington. Here's proof. Here's the fix. Adjust the depth mechanism 3 feet for every 10 feet of setting. June 1943. Buord finally, grudgingly, acknowledges the depth problem. They order all submarines to manually adjust their depth settings. Problem 1, solved. 18 months into the war, but torpedoes are still failing. July 1943. USS Tinosa, Commander Daspit, Tonin Maru, 15 torpedoes, 2 explosions, 13 duds. When Daspit returns to Pearl Harbor with his unexploded torpedo, he storms into Lockwood's office and slams the patrol report on the desk. "Sir, with respect, our torpedoes are garbage." Lockwood looks at the numbers. At point-blank range, perfect setup, 13 failures. "Did you save the dud?" "Yes, sir." "Good. We're going to blow it up." Here's where it gets illegal. The Mark VI magnetic exploder is classified top secret. Lockwood isn't authorized to examine it, isn't authorized to test it, certainly isn't authorized to modify it. The Bureau of Ordnance has explicitly forbidden field testing of the magnetic exploder. It's too sensitive, too classified, too expensive. Lockwood orders the test anyway. August 1943, back at Cahulawi. This time, Lockwood's team fires torpedoes at an actual ship, the USS Mustin, a destroyer scheduled for scrapping. They moor her near the cliffs, turn off her engines, eliminate her magnetic field. They fire Mark 14S set to run beneath her keel. Magnetic exploders active, nothing happens. The torpedoes run directly beneath Mustin, no detonations. Lockwood orders the magnetic exploders deactivated. Use contact exploders only. August 31st, 1943, he sends the order to every submarine in the Pacific. Deactivate all magnetic exploders. Use contact mode only. Problem 2 solved. 21 months into the war, but torpedoes are still failing. Daspit's patrol proved it, even with depth corrections, even with magnetic exploders off. 11 out of 13 torpedoes hitting at perpendicular angles failed to detonate on contact. The contact exploder itself is broken, and proving it is going to require something crazy. Lockwood orders his team to fire torpedoes directly at the cliff face, not into nets, into rock, at full speed. The exploders are supposed to trigger on impact. They fire. The torpedoes strike solid rock, the warheads crumple, and the firing pins bend without detonating. That's the problem. The firing pin is too fragile. When the torpedo hits at a 90-degree angle, a perfect hit, the impact crushes the pin before it can trigger the detonator. A perfect shot is a guaranteed dud. September 1943, Washington, D.C., Bureau of Ordnance Headquarters. The room erupts. "You did what?" Rear Admiral William Spike Blandy, chief of the Bureau of Ordnance, is standing. His face is red. The conference table is covered with Lockwood's test reports, photographs of bent firing pins, torpedo fragments recovered from Kahoolawe. Blandy's staff is equally furious. "You had no authorization to conduct these tests. The Mark VI exploder is classified. It's also defective," Lockwood says calmly. "All 3 components, depth mechanism, magnetic exploder, contact exploder. I have data from over 40 test firings. Field tests are unreliable. Our laboratory testing proves your laboratory testing used dummy warheads and didn't account for combat conditions." Lockwood slides another folder across the table. Here's data from every submarine patrol since February. 1,782 torpedoes fired. Estimated 54% failure rate. That's not operator error. That's systemic mechanical failure. The room goes silent. One of Blandy's engineers picks up the folder, flips through it, stops at photographs of the Tinosa patrol. Tonin Maru wallowing. Torpedo impact marks visible on her hull. No explosions. The contact exploder is mechanically sound. The engineer insists. "We've tested." "Did you test it by firing torpedoes at 90-degree angles into armor plate at 46 knots? Lockwood asks. Silence. "We followed the testing protocols." "Your protocols are killing submariners. I have commanders who've been relieved for lack of aggression because their weapons don't work. I have boats staying in combat zones too long because they can't confirm kills. We lost USS Argonaut. We lost USS Amberjack. We lost USS Grampus. How many of them died because they stayed on patrol, trying to make defective torpedoes work? Admiral Blandy leans forward. Your field tests violated security protocols. You examined classified components without authorization. You modified torpedo depth settings without Bureau approval. I could have you court-martialed. Then do it, Lockwood says. And while you're at it, explain to Admiral Nimitz why the Silent Service has been fighting for 21 months with weapons that don't work. The room erupts again. Accusations fly. Lockwood's unauthorized testing, Bureau's inadequate pre-war development, the cost of retooling, the impossibility of redesigning the contact exploder mid-war. And then the door opens. Admiral Chester Nimitz, Commander-in-Chief Pacific Fleet, walks in. The room snaps to attention. Nimitz looks at Blandy, looks at Lockwood, looks at the photographs on the table. Gentlemen, sit. They sit. Admiral Lockwood, your report claims the Mark 14 has a systematic contact exploder failure when hitting targets at perpendicular angles, yes? Yes, sir. The firing pin is too fragile. It bends on impact instead of triggering the detonator. And your recommendation? Redesign the firing pin, heavier construction, stronger spring, or replace the entire contact exploder with an electric detonator. Nimitz looks at Blandy. Admiral? Blandy clears his throat. Sir, redesigning the exploder would require retooling, months of testing. We'd have to recall existing inventory. How long? 6 months, maybe longer. Too long. Nimitz taps the photographs. We're launching the Central Pacific Offensive in November. Tarawa, Mackinac, Kwajalein. I need submarine support cutting Japanese supply lines. I need torpedoes that work. Admiral Lockwood, you have authorization to implement an interim solution, whatever you need. Admiral Blandy, you will provide technical support. Sir, the Bureau of Ordnance will cooperate, or I'll find someone who will. Nimitz stands. The meeting is over. If you're enjoying this story of military innovation against impossible odds, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. We cover the greatest untold stories of World War II, the mavericks, the outcasts, the rule breakers who changed history. New videos every week. Now, let's watch Lockwood's Fix Hit the Enemy. September 1943, Pearl Harbor submarine base. Lockwood's technical team works around the clock. They can't redesign the entire contact exploder. They don't have time. They don't have authority. What they can do is modify existing exploders. Solution: replace the fragile firing pin with a heavier one. Increase the spring tension. Make the mechanism robust enough to withstand perpendicular impacts without crushing. By October 1943, modified exploders are being installed in every submarine in the Pacific. Each one is individually tested, bench-tested, inspected. Lockwood insists on perfection. Every exploder better work, he tells his ordnance crews, or we're back to throwing duds at the Japanese. The first combat test comes fast. October 6, 1943, USS Wahoo, under the command of legendary Commander Dudley "Mush" Morton, departs Pearl Harbor for her 7th war patrol. Destination: Sea of Japan. Every torpedo carries the new exploder. Wahoo never returns. On October 11th, Japanese records show a submarine torpedoed and sunk by aircraft in La Perouse Strait. All 79 crew lost. But before she went down, Wahoo sent radio reports of successful torpedo attacks. 4 ships sunk. Every torpedo functioned. The fix worked. Too late for Wahoo, but it worked. October to November 1943, the first confirmed successes flood in. USS Drum sinks 3 cargo ships off Formosa. USS Bowfin tears through a convoy near the Philippines. 5 ships, 7 torpedoes, 5 kills. The ratio is transforming before Lockwood's eyes. Before the fix, submariners fired an average of 12 torpedoes per confirmed kill, 60% failure rate. After the fix, 3 torpedoes per kill, 85% success rate. The difference is staggering. Deadly. December 1943. The Central Pacific Offensive begins. Marines storm ashore at Tarawa. At the same time, American submarines blockade every major Japanese port. Supply convoys from the Dutch East Indies cut to ribbons. Oil tankers from Borneo torpedoed before they reach Luzon. Troop transports heading to reinforce island garrisons sent to the bottom. The Mark 14, finally functioning as designed, becomes the most lethal naval weapon in the Pacific. USS Tang, Commander Richard O'Kane. Between January and October 1944, Tang conducts 5 war patrols, 33 ships sunk, 116,454 tons of Japanese shipping sent to the bottom. O'Kane becomes the most successful submarine commander in U.S. Navy history. His favorite tactic, close-range night surface attacks. Tang would charge into the middle of a Japanese convoy, surfaced in the dark, and fire spreads of torpedoes at multiple targets simultaneously. It required insane courage and absolute confidence in his torpedoes. January 22, 1944. The Tang's first patrol. Off the coast of Palau, O'Kane spots a heavily escorted convoy. 4 cargo ships, 2 destroyers zigzagging evasively. Tang goes to periscope depth. O'Kane fires 6 torpedoes in 90 seconds. 3 hit the first cargo ship. It explodes, breaks in half, sinks in 4 minutes. 2 hit the second ship. Catastrophic internal explosions. The ship rolls over, sinking in 6 minutes. The 6th torpedo hits a destroyer attempting to ram Tang. The destroyer's bow disintegrates and she limps away, smoking. The entire attack takes 11 minutes. 3 ships destroyed, 6 torpedoes fired, 6 hits. The Japanese are stunned. After 20 months of American submarines with unreliable weapons, suddenly every torpedo is lethal. A captured Japanese convoy commander later wrote, "We expected American submarines. We trained for torpedo evasion, but after late 1943, evasion became impossible. Their torpedoes struck from every angle. Shallow, deep bow shots, stern shots, all detonated. Our convoys could not survive." June 1944, Formosa Strait. USS Tang intercepts a 7-ship convoy. O'Kane attacks on the surface at night. 11 torpedoes fired, 10 ships hit, 5 sunk immediately, 2 sink later from damage. The convoy is annihilated. From the Japanese escort destroyer Asashimo's after-action report, American submarine attack. Multiple torpedoes from multiple angles. Explosions every 30 seconds. Cargo ships Taitoku Maru, Yamato Maru, Ryuko Maru, Nikko Maru all sunk. Destroyers unable to counterattack due to speed and accuracy of enemy torpedoes. His submarine escaped. The Mark 14 was doing what it was always supposed to do, breaking the back of Japanese logistics. By mid-1944, Japan was losing ships faster than they could build them. Oil imports dropped 70%. Troop reinforcements couldn't reach island garrisons. Food shipments from Southeast Asia, gone. Steel, rubber, ammunition, all at the bottom of the Pacific. The numbers tell the story. 1942, American submarines sank 180 Japanese ships, 725,000 tons. 1943, 335 ships sunk, 1.5 million tons. 1944, 603 ships sunk, 2.7 million tons. The difference? Working torpedoes. Admiral Lockwood kept meticulous records. In 1945, he calculated that fixing the Mark 14 increased submarine effectiveness by 400%. Had we entered the war with a functioning torpedo, he wrote, Japan's merchant marine would have collapsed by mid-1943. We lost 18 months to bureaucratic denial. But there's one more story, one that proves just how lethal the fixed Mark 14 became. October 23, 1944, USS Tang, Commander O'Kane, Formosa Strait, 5th War Patrol, 24 torpedoes loaded. After 10 days of hunting, Tang intercepts a massive convoy, 11 ships, 7 escorts. O'Kane attacks on the surface at night. The battle lasts 6 hours. Tang fires 23 torpedoes, 18 hits, 7 ships sunk. It's the most devastating single submarine attack in naval history. Then disaster. Tang fires her 24th and final torpedo at a fleeing transport. The torpedo malfunctions, a circular runner. It curves back toward Tang. O'Kane tries to evade. Too late. The torpedo strikes Tang's stern, explodes. The submarine sinks in seconds. 78 crew lost. Only 9 survivors, including O'Kane, are captured by the Japanese. Even in tragedy, the Mark 14's final torpedo functioned perfectly. O'Kane later received the Medal of Honor, awarded by President Truman after his release from a Japanese POW camp in 1945. By war's end, American submarines had sunk 1,392 Japanese ships, 5.3 million tons, 55% of all Japanese merchant shipping destroyed. The silent service had strangled Japan's war machine, and it was only possible because Charles Lockwood refused to accept the torpedo works fine. This is the kind of untold history that changes how you see World War II. If you want more stories like this, leaders who broke the rules to save lives, smash that like button and drop a comment telling us which World War II weapon or technology you want covered next. And check out our video on the P-51 Mustang pilot who rewrote fighter tactics. Link in the description. Now let's see what happened after the war. August 15, 1945, Japan surrenders. The silent service returns to Pearl Harbor victorious. Submarine crews receive a message from Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz. You have written the most remarkable chapter in naval warfare. Against an enemy whose merchant marine was vital to survival, you destroyed over half their shipping. You did so at tremendous cost. We lost 52 submarines and 3,506 men, but your sacrifice shortened the war and saved countless American lives. Ye well done. Charles Lockwood never sought fame. After the war, he retired quietly, wrote his memoirs, consulted for the Navy on submarine tactics. He refused interviews about the torpedo scandal. I did my job, he'd say. The submarine crews did the real fighting. But the submariners never forgot. In 1965, 20 years after the war, the Submarine Veterans Association held a reunion in San Diego. Lockwood attended reluctantly. During the dinner, a veteran stood up. Commander Roy Benson retired. He'd commanded USS Trigger during the dark days of 1942. Admiral, Benson said, I fired 14 torpedoes on one patrol. 14 perfect shots, all duds. My crew thought I'd lost my nerve. The Bureau of Ordnance thought I was incompetent. But you believed us. You proved we were right. Sir, because of you, we came home. The room stood and applauded for 5 minutes. Lockwood wept. The Mark 14 remained in service until 1980, 39 years. During the Cold War, it was upgraded with improved guidance systems, but retained the core design. Over 60,000 Mark 14s were produced during and after World War II. The testing lessons from Kahoolawe became standard Navy protocol. All weapons now undergo comprehensive field testing before deployment. The Mark 48 heavyweight torpedo, today's primary submarine weapon, was subjected to over 5 years of live-fire testing before entering service in 1972. the magnetic exploder technology that failed so catastrophically in 1942, perfected by the 1950s. Or modern torpedoes like the Mark 48 use magnetic sensors combined with acoustic homing, detecting both the magnetic signature and sound of enemy ships. But the most important legacy isn't technical, it's cultural. After the Mark 14 scandal, the Navy institutionalized the principle that field commanders must be heard, that patrol reports matter, that operational data outweighs laboratory theory. The phrase, "the torpedo works fine," became a cautionary tale taught at the Naval Academy, a reminder that bureaucratic arrogance kills. Lockwood died in 1967. He was 76. His obituary in the Navy Times was brief, but every submarine base in the Pacific lowered flags to half-mast. In 2016, researchers located the wreck of USS Tang in the Formosa Strait. Using deep-sea imaging, they found her resting in 300 feet of water. Her torpedo tubes were empty. She'd fired every weapon, done her duty. The last torpedo that sank her had functioned exactly as designed, a grim proof that Lockwood's fix worked. Today, at the Submarine Force Museum in Groton, Connecticut, they display an original Mark 14 torpedo beside a modern Mark 48. The placard reads, "Perfection is the enemy of progress, but progress without testing is disaster." Charles Lockwood's lesson endures. Listen to your warriors. Test your weapons. Question authority when lives are at stake, because sometimes saving the world requires breaking the rules.